Something huge is happening in Iran, one of America's oldest and fiercest adversaries. The country is on fire, with widespread anti-government protests erupting everywhere. And this time, it just feels different. So we're going to break down what's going on, why it matters, and dig into the one question that is on absolutely everyone's mind. Could this actually be the moment the Iranian people overthrow their government?
So, is this it? Are we really watching the potential collapse of the Islamic Republic? To even begin to answer that, we have to understand the spark that lit this whole fire and the increasingly desperate moves the regime is now making just to survive.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the trigger, what kicked this all off. Then we'll look at the history here, because this isn't the first time. We'll examine the government's crackdown, understand the global stakes, why you should care, and finally, we'll explore what it would really take for this whole regime to fall.
So, how did this all start? Well, it wasn't some grand political statement or a single event. Nope. This began with a full-blown economic implosion that pushed millions of ordinarians right to the absolute brink.
I mean, just try to imagine this for a second. The national currency, the rial, is in a complete freefall, hitting an all-time low. At the exact same time, inflation skyrockets past 50%. Think about that. Your life savings are essentially wiped out, and just buying basic food becomes a daily struggle. That was the economic trigger right there. What started as an economic protest in Tehran's famous Grand Bazaar, well, it didn't stay that way. It absolutely exploded, spreading like wildfire across all 31 of Iran's provinces. And listen to how the chants on the street evolved. They went from, complaining about prices to death to the dictator. And here's the crucial part. It wasn't just students and workers anymore. The merchants themselves, the shopkeepers, they joined in. That is a huge deal.
Now, you might be thinking, haven't we seen protests in Iran before? And you're right. This isn't the first time Iranians have risen up. There's a definite pattern of dissent, but there are also some major signs that this time is unique.
If you look at this timeline, you can see the cycle pretty clearly. It goes back to 2009 with the Green Movement. Then you have unrest in 2017, the incredibly bloody fuel protests in 2019, and of course, the powerful woman life freedom movement just a few years ago. Each time, something sparks massive popular anger, and each time it's met with a brutal government crackdown. So what's the game changer now? What makes this moment feel so different? Well, it comes down to one group, the bazaar merchants. You have to understand, this is a historically conservative and powerful group. They were actually a key part of the 1979 revolution that brought this very regime to power. So for them to now shut their shops and join the strikes, wow. That signals a much, much deeper crisis for the government. It suggests their pillar of support is cracking. So, how's the regime handling all this? Well, faced with a challenge this big, the government is falling back on a playbook of increasingly desperate moves just to hang on to power. They look truly cornered. First, they hit the kill switch on the internet, trying to throw the country into a digital blackout to hide what they're doing. Then they escalate the violence on the streets. We're talking live ammunition. There are even reports they're bringing in foreign mercenaries, which is a huge red flag that they might not even trust their own security forces. You mix in some small economic handouts and a whole lot of rhetoric blaming foreign enemies, and you've got a government that's clearly in panic mode. And the human cost of this desperation is just staggering. Now, official numbers are impossible to get with the internet down, but some of the unverified reports coming out of hospitals in Tehran alone have claimed over 200 people have been killed. A really brutal price for dissent. And the regime's brutal response is exactly why this isn't just some internal struggle. What happens in Tehran has massive ripple effects for the United States, for the entire Middle East, and really, for the whole world. This slide really just shows you the core conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the regime pouring money into its foreign proxies, groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. And on the other side, you have the Iranian people's demands. This is why you hear them chanting that incredible slogan in the streets, "No Gaza or Lebanon, my life is a scapegoat for Iran." They're begging their government to invest in them, not in foreign wars. And that gets to the very heart of why the US is watching this so closely. A weakened or even a different Iranian regime could mean a huge drop in funding for groups that destabilize the Middle East and target American interests. As this quote from Russell Berman at the Hoover Institution says, genuine US national interests are at stake. The stakes for American foreign policy are just incredibly high. Now, when we talk about external factors, the American response has been a big part of the story. Former President Donald Trump, for example, was especially direct. He gave strong verbal support to the protesters, he issued these really stark warnings to the regime about killing demonstrators, and he even put out that post on Truth Social, promising the people of Iran that help is on its way. So all of this brings us right back to our main question. With this massive uprising, this brutal crackdown, this international attention, what would it actually take for the protesters to succeed and for the government to fall?
So what would it really take? It's way more than just angry crowds. Experts point to 5 key things. First, you need massive, and more importantly, sustained mobilization all across the country. Second, and this is a huge one, you need defections from the security forces. Police and military have to start refusing to fire on their own people. Third, you need unified opposition leadership with a clear plan. Fourth, the people have to be resilient enough to survive the crackdown. And finally, you need a supportive external environment from the rest of the world.
And on that leadership point, one figure has really stepped forward: the exiled Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi. He's positioned himself not as a monarch trying to get his throne back, but as more of a transitional figure. His whole idea is to guide Iran towards a national referendum, to let the people themselves decide their own future.
The pieces are absolutely in motion, and the bravery the Iranian people are showing is just incredible. But as the regime gets more desperate and the international community just watches, all of this leaves us with one final provocative question. Time will tell if this is a true tipping point, but is the next move America's?